What if I told you that companies who are, aggressively adopting artificial intelligence right now aren't actually causing mass layoffs, but are instead paying their employees significantly higher wages?
I mean, it completely upends the narrative you see every time you open a news app. Right now, we are constantly ping-ponging between uh, tech CEOs promising this utopian work-free future on one side, and then on the other side, the doom-scrolling anxiety that algorithms are going to vaporize every single job on the planet.
Yeah, trying to measure the actual impact of AI by just reading headlines is like trying to measure the speed of a moving car while looking through a funhouse mirror. The distortion is just everywhere.
Exactly. You really can't trust what you're seeing at a glance.
Which is why today we are smashing the funhouse mirror. We're ditching the tech bro hype and the apocalyptic predictions to look at hard causal data. Welcome to today's deep dive. We've got our hands on an incredibly detailed, fascinating working paper from January 2026.
And it's a heavyweight paper, too.
Oh, absolutely. It's published jointly by the European Investment Bank and the Bank for International Settlements. It's titled AI Adoption, Productivity, and Employment. Evidence from European firms.
And the mission for our analysis today is what makes this specific paper so incredibly valuable for you listening. Because instead of relying on macroeconomic guesswork or, watching isolated laboratory experiments where people type prompts in a total vacuum.
Which we see all the time.
Right, all the time. Instead of that, we're going to unpack what happens when real non-financial companies adopt AI. We're talking about a massive real-world data set here. It's the EIB survey, which covers 12,000 European firms and 800 U.S. firms.
So we are looking at real businesses with real payrolls, real supply chains, and, real quarterly targets.
Precisely. Do they fire people? Do they suddenly become hyperproductive overnight? Our objective today is to uncover the firm-level economic impact of AI in Europe right now. Not in some theoretical 10 years, but what is happening in the global economy today.
Okay, so before we can analyze how AI is changing these companies, I feel like we have to look at who actually has their hands on the technology, because the prevailing narrative is always that the United States is just, eating Europe's lunch when it comes to the tech sector.
And if you stop at the raw innovation data, that narrative holds up perfectly. The paper confirms a massive baseline gap. I mean, the European Union is heavily trailing the U.S. in AI-related patents.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, and that gap didn't just appear overnight. It widened significantly after the pandemic. The U.S. just has a much stronger specialization in AI innovation.
But, and I think this is key, creating the technology and actually deploying the technology inside a business are two very different things.
Oh, totally different. When we look at deployment, the firms actually putting these AI models to work, it becomes a heavily nuanced story. On average, adoption levels between the U.S. and the EU are somewhat similar, but there's this immense internal variation within Europe.
Based strictly on financial development, right?
Exactly. The data shows that highly financially developed EU countries are actually matching, or in some cases beating, the U.S. average. So the U.S. adoption rate is sitting at about 34%.
Okay.
But look at Sweden. They're up at 52% adoption.
Wow. 52%. That's a huge jump.
It is. But then the stark contrast appears when you move to less financially developed EU countries. A country like Romania, for example, is lagging significantly at around 22%.
So it's about the environment.
Right. The environment a firm operates in the depth of its local financial markets, its ability to secure capital for major technological investments, that dictates whether it can even step onto the playing field.
Well, and it's not just geography either.
Yeah.
The sector breakdown in this data had some genuine surprises for me. I mean, the obvious players are leading the pack, of course.
Yeah.
The information communications technology sector, the big pharma companies.
Sure, the usual suspects.
But then you look at food manufacturing, and it shows incredibly high, above average AI uptake. Meanwhile, accommodation and food services like hotels, local restaurants, they're trailing way behind.
It really raises an important question about structural readiness. Why would a company making frozen pizzas be so far ahead of a massive hotel chain in adopting cutting-edge algorithms?
Well, let's visualize that for a second. Think about a massive frozen pizza factory. They operate with incredibly complex, highly structured supply chains.
Right, massive scale.
Yeah, they track exactly how many tons of flour arrive at the loading dock, the minute-by-minute temperature of the industrial ovens, the GPS logistics of a fleet of freezer trucks. They inherently generate massive data sets.
Data sets that are perfectly formatted to be fed into an AI for predictive analytics or supply chain optimization.
Exactly. But then think about your local bed and breakfast, or even a mid-sized boutique hotel. The owner might use booking software, sure, but they don't have the vast, continuous structured data infrastructure required to make an enterprise-level AI actually useful.
No, of course not. An algorithm can't optimize handwritten guest ledgers or just disjointed spreadsheets on a desktop computer.
Right, so sectors like manufacturing have incredibly clear use cases for automation, and crucially, they already have the technical architecture in place.
Which is a perfect segue, because knowing that rich, tech-savvy firms with lots of data are using AI leads us right into a classic data trap. It's known as the endogeneity problem.
Okay, the endogeneity problem, break that down for us.
Basically, if we see that these rich, tech-savvy firms are using AI, and we also see that those same firms are highly productive, how do we separate the variables?
Like the chicken or the egg.
Exactly. Are they productive because they integrated AI into their workflows? Or did they just buy the AI because they were already well-managed, highly productive, and swimming in cash?
Oh, I see. Because if you just look at a basic graph of those two things, you might assume AI is this magic wand, when in reality, the company was already a powerhouse before the software was even installed.
Precisely. So to prove a causal link, to prove that the AI technology itself is creating a distinct productivity boost, these researchers had to get incredibly creative with their methodology.
Which I loved reading about.
It's so smart. They took the 12,000 European firms in their survey. Let's say one is a mid-sized German auto parts manufacturer. The researchers then scoured a separate pool of 800 U.S. firms to find an American company that matches the German firm on almost every conceivable metric.
Wait, like an exact match? Size, sector, that sort of thing?
Everything. Size, sector, investment intensity, innovation activity, management structure, even how they finance their debt.
So wait, are you saying they basically went looking for a company's multiverse variant?
That's a brilliant way to picture it. An identical twin operating in a totally different universe.
Okay, but why does finding an American multiverse twin help us understand the productivity of a German factory? Like, how does that solve the data trap?
Because the U.S. firm operates in a completely different institutional and policy environment. The researchers took the American firm's AI adoption behavior and assigned it to the European firm as a proxy.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, by doing that, they strip away all the local, unobserved European biases. They filter out things like, say, a specific local tech subsidy in Berlin or a uniquely European managerial culture. They isolate the raw power of the tech itself, completely untainted by local variables.
That's just brilliant data science. So when they ran this multiverse methodology and they finally got past the correlation, what was the real causal number they found?
The study proves that AI adoption increases labor productivity at the firm level by 4%.
4%.
4%.
Okay, I have to push back slightly on that number.
Yeah.
Because 4% feels incredibly low when you look at the media landscape. We've got tech CEOs out there promising that AI is going to double or triple human productivity.
Oh, absolutely.
They're selling us on 100%, 200% gains. And the hard causal data comes back at a single-digit 4%. I mean, why should anyone care about a 4% bump?
Well, we should care precisely because it is realistic. It's grounded in firm-level reality rather than a sales pitch. If we connect this to the bigger picture, many macroeconomic models have warned that overall aggregate growth from AI might actually be virtually invisible, less than 0.1% annually, due to the immense friction of implementing new technology across an entire economy.
Oh, sure. Friction is huge.
Yeah.
But on the other extreme, you have lab experiments showing people writing code or drafting emails 40% faster using a chatbot.
Exactly. The single individual using a chatbot to write a memo is phenomenally faster. But that individual task efficiency doesn't seamlessly translate to a 10,000-person company's bottom line.
Right, because organizations are full of friction.
Yes. Enterprise software takes months to integrate safely. Entire departmental workflows have to be redesigned. Legal compliance has to be verified.
Right. It's not just flicking a switch.
No, not at all. So a 4% causal increase in overall labor productivity at the firm level is actually massive when applied across thousands of companies. It aligns with the most credible mid-range macroeconomic projections. It's not a utopian productivity boom where everyone works 2 days a week, but it is a very real, very significant competitive advantage for the businesses that figure it out.
Okay, so what does this all mean for the people actually working at these companies? If a firm's productivity goes up 4%, I feel like the immediate anxiety for anyone listening to this is that the firm achieved that 4% by firing 4% of its staff.
It's the most logical fear to have.
Right. You automate the tasks, you cut the payroll, and the productivity per remaining worker artificially goes up.
But this brings us to one of the most comforting findings in the entire paper. The data shows absolutely no evidence of adverse effects on firm-level employment in the short run.
Wait, really? No job losses?
None in the short run. Adopting AI did not lead to these companies shedding jobs. Instead, the researchers attribute this 4% productivity gain to a mechanism called capital deepening.
Capital deepening. Okay, explain that for us.
Capital deepening occurs when a company gives its existing workers better, more advanced tools. This increases the output of each individual worker without reducing the total headcount. The AI is augmenting their cognitive tasks, not replacing the human executing them.
I love that. Here's a real-world way to visualize capital deepening for everyone. Imagine a construction worker who has spent their whole career digging building foundations with a hand trowel. It takes them weeks to finish a single job.
Sure.
One day, the boss shows up and hands them the keys to a brand new, massive hydraulic excavator. The boss doesn't fire the worker, right? The boss still desperately needs a human to operate the machine safely. But suddenly, that single worker is moving 100 times more dirt in a single afternoon. You augment the worker, you don't replace them.
That's a perfect analogy. The AI is essentially the excavator for modern cognitive work. It handles the repetitive, heavy lifting, sorting through massive spreadsheets, drafting standard legal boilerplate, scanning thousands of lines of code for basic bugs.
Stuff that takes humans hours.
Exactly. And the human worker is now operating the machine. They're reviewing the output, checking for hallucinations, and making higher-level strategic decisions based on that process information. And because the worker is now dramatically more productive, the data reveals a surprising secondary effect.
The wage bump. I mentioned this at the very beginning.
Yes. The researchers found that workers in AI-adopting firms are actually earning higher wages right now compared to their peers in non-adopting firms. The companies are sharing the productivity dividend with the augmented workforce.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. We really need to look at the timeline of this survey. We're looking at data collected between 2019 and 2024.
Right, a 5-year window.
5 years. The excavator is brand new. Are we just in the honeymoon phase here? I mean, is it possible that right now, companies need the workers to train the AI and verify its outputs, but once the AI is fully integrated and the models can execute multi-step workflows entirely independently, do the robots actually come for the jobs then?
That is a vital caveat, and to be fair, the paper explicitly notes it. While there are no short-run adverse effects on employment, the longer-term effects remain highly uncertain. We are currently in an adoption and integration phase.
A transitional period.
Exactly. Right now, the complementarity between the human and the AI is incredibly strong. But 10 years from now, as the technology matures from an assistant into an autonomous agent, the employment dynamics could absolutely shift.
Which makes right now a critical window for both workers and companies to secure their footing. Because even if jobs aren't disappearing today, the data reveals a massive catch.
A very big catch.
Yeah. If this 4% productivity bump is a golden ticket, we need to look closely at who is actually getting to cash it in.
This is where the tone of the paper shifts from optimistic to highly cautionary. The distributional effects, meaning how these benefits are spread out across the economy, they are alarming.
The adoption is highly stratified. Let's look at the firm sizes in the data. 45% of large firms, meaning those with over 250 employees, are actively using AI.
Right.
But when you look at small firms with 10 to 49 employees, only 24% are using it.
This brings us right back to your pizza factory versus the local bed and breakfast analogy. The productivity benefits of AI are concentrating heavily in medium and large firms. They have the financial scale to absorb the massive integration costs. They already have the structured data.
And because they are receiving this 4% compound advantage year over year, there's a severe risk of widening income and corporate inequality. The gap between the mega corporation and the local business is just going to accelerate.
Because the productivity dividend isn't magic, it requires serious capital. The researchers measured what happens when companies make complementary investments alongside their AI adoption. If a company invests an extra percentage point of their budget into software and data infrastructure, it boosts the baseline AI productivity effect by 2.4%.
You need better digital pipes for the data to flow through. That makes logical sense.
It does. But here is the most important statistic in the entire study, and it has absolutely nothing to do with software.
Okay, lay it on us.
Investing an extra percentage point in employee training boosts the AI productivity effect by an incredible 5.9%.
Wow, 5.9%. That is more than double the return of just buying better software or faster servers.
Exactly. The most advanced algorithm on Earth is completely useless if your workforce doesn't know how to wield it safely and effectively. The paper specifically calls for workforce reskilling in what they term fusion skills.
Fusion skills. I like that term. Fusing the human judgment with the machine's brute force. The paper highlights 3 specific areas for this, right?
Sure.
Prompt engineering, data stewardship, and human-in-the-loop decision-making.
Yes. Let's look at what the absence of those fusion skills actually looks like on the ground, just to understand why that 5.9% boost exists.
Let's do it.
Imagine 2 logistics managers at competing firms. Worker A does not have fusion skills. They're handed a massive new AI optimization tool, and they simply type in, "Optimize my delivery routes for the lowest fuel cost."
Seems reasonable.
Sure. And the AI spits out a route that is highly fuel efficient, but completely ignores local municipal noise ordinances for night deliveries.
Oh, no.
Worker A implements the route blindly because the computer told them it was mathematically optimal. A week later, the company is hit with tens of thousands of dollars in fines, and their trucks are impounded.
They bought the software, but they didn't have the skills to use it safely.
Exactly. Now look at worker B, who has been trained in fusion skills. They understand data stewardship. They know the AI model doesn't automatically factor in local municipal laws unless it is explicitly fed that specific legal data set.
Right, they know the limits of the data.
They use prompt engineering to set strict operational constraints before ever asking for a route. And crucially, they utilize human-in-the-loop decision-making. When the AI suggests a highly unusual route, worker B evaluates it against real-world context before hitting approve.
The human judgment factor.
Exactly. Worker B completes in 10 minutes what used to take 3 days and does it flawlessly. That is why training delivers a 5.9% productivity boost. The AI isn't doing the work. Worker B is using the AI to do perfect work.
But this terrifies me for the small business owner listening to this. If I run a company with 20 employees, I'm already trailing the big corporations in AI adoption because I don't have their massive data infrastructure. Now, the data is telling me that to get the real benefit, to keep up with that 4% compound growth, I don't just need to buy expensive software licenses. I need the budget to run continuous high-level fusion skill training programs for my entire staff. I mean, does this data mean the small business is just fundamentally locked out of the next economic era?
That is the immense structural divergence the global economy is facing right now, particularly in Europe, which has an industrial landscape heavily dominated by small and medium enterprises. If the returns on artificial intelligence are structurally biased toward massive companies who can afford the complementary investments in training and data architecture,
Then what happens?
we are going to see a severe hollowing out of the mid-market. The paper stresses that public policy has to step in to prevent this.
By subsidizing the cost of the technology, like handing out grants for software.
Subsidizing software licenses or computer chips isn't enough, as the data proves. The policy must heavily incentivize firm-level investment in human capital. We need coordinated public investments in vocational training and lifelong learning programs. We have to build an infrastructure where the workforce of smaller firms can develop those fusion skills without bankrupting the small business owner.
We have covered an enormous amount of ground today, so let's synthesize this journey for you, the listener. We started by cutting through the utopian hype and the doom scrolling to look at the real-world deployment of AI. We saw that while the EU trails in patents, highly developed financial markets actually allow deployment to keep pace with the US.
And we explored the ingenious multiverse methodology where researchers found American corporate twins to strip away local biases, proving that AI doesn't just correlate with success, it actually causes a firm 4% increase in labor productivity.
Right. We tackled the immediate human cost, learning that right now, AI is acting as a cognitive excavator, not a grim reaper for your job. It's driving capital deepening, maintaining headcounts, and even pushing wages higher for the workers who are augmented by the technology.
But we also hit the harsh systemic reality. This is currently a rich company's game. It's a massive productivity multiplier for large firms that already have the resources to buy the tech and, most importantly, to heavily train their people in vital fusion skills.
The dividing line of the next decade is coming into sharp focus, which leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you to ponder. We've seen the hard data. We know that right now, only the medium and large companies have the financial architecture to truly harness this technology.
It's a sobering thought.
It really is. If AI structurally rewards massive scale, if it makes the big guys vastly more efficient, while small businesses are priced out of the necessary data integration and fusion training, are we accelerating toward an economy entirely dominated by megacorporations? Could the sheer cost of safely optimizing AI inadvertently kill off the local independent business model entirely?
It is arguably the defining economic challenge of our time.
So look around your own workplace this week. Are your leaders just buying software licenses and hoping for the best, or are they actively investing in your fusion skills? Because the data clearly shows that in 5 years, the massive economic divide won't just be between megacorporations and small businesses. It will be between the workers who were taught how to drive the excavator and the ones still holding the hand trowel. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.